All right, welcome to the station, Kentucky's only program that deals with politics and culture, but from a conservative perspective. Well, we are in June, and June has now become the high holy month for the new state religion, the LGBT movement. We're in Pride Month, right? The LGBT Pride Month, and all that it entails. So that means basically rainbows everywhere. We get every business puts up their rainbow flag. Target gets to sell strange clothing to transvestites. We get to put transgender people on beer cans, and the culture just celebrates this movement and this ideology, and this I think is really basically a pseudo religion. We're sort of worshiping this whole idea of just libertine sexuality, and so there we go. It's called Pride Month, and so bow down to it, or else. And so to that front, what does that mean for Kentucky, right? This is a program about Kentucky and Louisville, and so how's our state faring in the cultural, let's just say the cultural combat that we're dealing with LGBT and plus and Q, whatever adjectives you want to add this week. And so to that front, we're going to talk to a couple of guests today. We have Bob Scott with us as well. Bob is one of our favorite co-hosts here, and he's worked with several different think tanks and specifically the Commonwealth Policy Center. And we have Richard Nelson with the Commonwealth Policy Center, and who follows all things cultural and political in this state. And so guys, welcome to the show. And that was kind of a dire sort of opening to this. But at the end of the day, this stuff is really kind of dark and twisted at the end, because it's affecting our children. It's affecting not just our sort of mores and the way we feel about the world and our fellow man here in Kentucky, but this movement's now really pushing to influence our children and for what I think nefarious purposes. But Bob, what are your thoughts on just Pride Month in general and how our country is kind of captivated with it right now?
First of all, I think it's ridiculous that something like this is being celebrated and lifted up. We are, as we had talked earlier, in a hyper sexuality type situation, that is occurring in our culture, in our nation, and it's attempted to obviously be brought into what is considered a conservative state. Kentucky has, for a while now, been what people would call a red state. We have a supermajority in both the state Senate and the House of Representatives, but yet we have a liberal governor right now that's doing his thing behind the scenes. So I do feel that there is some things we as conservatives, but more importantly as Christians, we need to be standing up and making our voices heard, and do it, of course, in a loving way. But it's time, fellas, to get out of our chairs and get out and start talking to people and making people realize that this is a problem. And unless we get up and start taking some actions, it's not going to get better. It's going to continue to get worse.
Absolutely. And as Christians, we need to think through this very carefully too, because obviously we can get disturbed, disgusted by just the ideology and the politics behind it, and I think rightfully so. There's certain righteous indignation. If you're trying to take my young girl or my young boy and who's going to an elementary school, and the teacher wants to tell them that, hey, you can be a boy if you want to be a boy, or you can be a girl, and that's just the way that life is, and you start putting those ideas into the heads of children. I think that's really grounds for child abuse on some level, because that's harmful and hurtful to those kids. So you should have righteous indignation. You should be upset about this, and at the same time, people that deal with these sort of same-sex attractions or gender dysphoria, or people that are just dealing with a lot of these issues,
Yeah.
deserve compassion. And they not deserve
Yes.
it, they need compassion. And you better give them some compassion when they're dealing with a lot of this stuff, because it is a difficult thing. I know a lot of folks with same-sex attractions who said, listen, I've never wanted this. I wouldn't choose it. I just have it. I'm dealing with it. I'm trying to work through it. And so we got to say that in a sense that this is not that there's a cultural issue and a movement behind these agendas that we have to stand up and fight with all of our might. At the same time, there's individual people in these movements that need love and compassion and concern, and we need to be very cognizant of how we sound as we combat this movement, that we're not somehow belittling the challenges that those folks deal with on just from a personal, spiritual level, even on a societal level. I'm not out to, if someone's a good person, they're working at a job, they happen to have a same-sex attraction, and they're not acting that out in a way that's disruptive to a company or their customers, whatever. You better not fire that person because of that. That's inappropriate. That's just inappropriate. It's unkind. It's unloving. But at the same time, if they want to show up in a dress and they're a man and they're doing customer service every day, I think I might have an issue with that. And so it's a complex issue, but it's an issue we better deal with, because if you don't, right now they're lining it up in a sense that if you don't line up with our vision of the world, if you don't affirm everybody's proclivities, not just tolerate it, not just, say, listen, I love that person, but I disagree with their lifestyle. No, you can't disagree with their lifestyle now. You better affirm it and celebrate it, or else you're the bad person. You're immoral, and that's wrong. And that is wrong. You can be a good person. Bob, you're a good person. I'm a good person. Richard's a great person. We're all decent Americans here. We can be a good person and disagree with somebody's lifestyle, but still love that person and still want them to be a productive member of society. And just like I might have a wayward cousin that he's a drunk, right? He's a drinker. I don't approve of his drunkenness, but I love my cousin. And so you can have those two thoughts, but the other side doesn't want to give you that option. So you better just celebrate the fact that I want to be a woman. And if you don't, then you're a hater. No, I'm not a hater. I love you. But I don't. You're not a woman. You weren't born a woman. You were born a man, and you're a man, and you can pretend to be a woman. Go ahead, go pretend to be a woman. But I'm not going to celebrate that and say that's going to be good for you, because it's not. I'm sorry. Let's get to Richard. So, Richard, I need to say that. This whole show thing. What am I going to say about this topic? That's what I'm going to say. So Richard. We're dealing with this on many different fronts, and so what does this mean for Kentucky? What are we dealing with right now, and as far as this issue, and culturally and politically, and what are some of how's this affecting us?
Yeah, well, Tom, first of all, it's great to be on the program with you. I appreciate what you said about being compassionate and caring to those who are involved with the LGBT movement. We need to remember that there's a reason why there are people involved with that movement. Many of those people have come from broken families. Some have been neglected, abused, abandoned by parents, some sexually abused. And so we need to approach this with care because we're dealing with real people. Francis Schaeffer, I love to quote Francis Schaeffer when I talk about culture war issues and when it seems like there's a great divide, as there is with the issue of Pride Month. But Francis Schaeffer used to say that there are two kinds of people in the world: those who are at war with God and those who used to be at war with God. And that means at one time, all of humanity was shaking their fist at Almighty God. And that means that I was a rebel against God. Tom, you were. Bob, you were. And this puts us in the same camp in some respects, or we have some point of connection with those who are at war with God right now, which means that we should be careful as we address them, because they are image bearers. They still happen to be at war with God. But what they need more than anything is to see God's grace and compassion, and to see those in the church who have a better vision of what it means to flourish. Those in the church who understand what peace is, who understand what it means to walk with their Creator, we need to do a better job communicating that to them. One reason why the LGBT movement has been so successful is because they have formed community where there is solidarity, there's like people that have had like life circumstances, and they support one another. They have community where they have care, support, and that is their community. What we need to do, there's an opportunity for us to share a vision of what church community is. What does it mean to be forgiven by our Savior? What does it mean to walk in God's truth and in his grace? What does it mean to have sacrificial love? Not self-centered love, but sacrificial love, where we care for one another's needs, where we encourage one another. So I see Pride Month not as much as a threat, even though I'm alarmed by many things that are happening in our culture. I think this is the result of a culture that has rejected God. Not just that, but a church that has withdrawn from cultural influence to a large degree.
Yeah.
So we have opportunity. We have another consideration, Tom, is that this is a very, very small group of people in Kentucky. The Kentucky Fairness Campaign is in Louisville, a small group of people, but they do have a lot of allies, largely in the media, the news media realm. Puts forth their events, they put forth their talking points, they speak their narrative, replay their narrative. We just need to do better at sharing a different story, a different vision. And I think that when we do that, and not just share a different story, but we truly embody the arms and the hands and the feet of Jesus, when we roll up our sleeves and get involved with somebody else's life, somebody who's struggling, somebody who needs to see God's care and compassion, that's when we begin to make the difference. But in order for that to happen, we've got to get out of our comfort zone.
Right.
We've got to get out of our safe areas, whether it's in the church or in our home, and start mixing it up with people. This means we have conversations in the workplace.
Right.
It means that we engage in political dialogue as well. And of course, we do it respectfully. We don't do things the way the world does.
Exactly right.
We do. I think of Colossians 4:6, where we're told to let our speech always be seasoned with grace, or be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that we may know how to answer each person. That's Colossians 4:5-6. When we do that, people know that there's something different about us. There's something, our heart is different, our attitude towards others is different. Tom, we will not win this battle for the culture and the battle for hearts and minds of people by condemning the culture, even though there's a place to point out what's wrong and how to do it better. But we will win the culture over and win people over through God's love and compassion towards them, and that's hard to do.
It absolutely is, and boy, so many great points there. I was wanting to jump in, and you were just on a roll. So the fact that the LGBT community basically reflects, it's almost as a pseudo church in a lot of ways, right? Because these are folks that are hurting, they need support. What do? They find a community, and it's very supportive and uplifting. There's a moral angle to it, because they can now be part of this movement that is as far as protecting the rights of these folks. So now they can become part of this new woke movement, which wokeism is sort of a pseudo religion anyway, because it creates the oppressors and the oppressed, and which is just like the sinners and the saints, and so it is a pseudo religion, and pseudo religious communities are formed within movements like this, and so the church needs to be cognizant of that. This is, at the end of the day, a spiritual issue. This is a political issue, obviously, that's working itself out in culture and politics, but there's a spiritual component to this that's working out in the heart of every person that's involved, and so understand those needs that these folks have, and so that is very, very poignant stuff. I really appreciate you sharing it that way. And I'll tell you what I want to do.
Tom, if I could jump in.
Yeah, please.
If I could jump in and share something too, there's different levels of this debate and of Christian engagement. And one of those levels is this, and you mentioned it earlier, that when you deal with children, that's a whole nother ballgame. And I think of what the state legislature did with Senate Bill 150. They passed a comprehensive bill that kept LGBT indoctrination out of the K-5 classroom. They prevented teachers from being coerced to use gender-preferred pronouns of students, and then to hide it from parents. That bill, Senate Bill 150, also prevented children, gender dysphoric children, children confused about their gender identity. It prevented them from pursuing hormone therapy or sex transition surgeries if they're under the age of 18. A line was crossed when children got involved in our state legislature by huge margins in both the House and Senate.
Yeah.
Passed that bill into law, and Governor Beshear vetoed it, but they overrode that veto. So we see where there's huge support for protecting children from political indoctrination, from LGBT indoctrination. If I could also add, at the cultural level, when you see a radical agenda pushed on culture, I'm thinking this whole idea of transgender, that men can become women,
right,
women can become men. When it's being pushed wholesale, many people in culture are rejecting it. You see what happened with Target. They're overtly and really pushing LGBT Pride Month with the transgender swimsuits, Satanist-inspired apparel as well. They lost $12 billion in just a matter of a couple weeks.
Right.
Bud Light, you mentioned Bud Light with the Dylan Mulvaney spokesperson. Their stock, according to the New York Post, this was a headline from just a couple days ago, Bud Light parent Anheuser-Busch's stock has lost $27 billion over Dylan Mulvaney. So you're seeing financial pushback where consumers do not want to participate in agendas and in ideology that offends their sensibilities. So people are pushing back, whether it's at the state legislative level, whether it's at the consumer retail level. Look, parents are pushing back in their public schools as well by showing up to school board meetings, and they're saying, hey, I don't think these kind of books or certain books should be in our schools. That was another bill the state legislature passed, by the way. It gave parents recourse to what is in their public school libraries, and they've got greater say in what goes on there. Yeah,
I think the whole movement is, I think, starting to come to a realization that they may have gone a bridge too far with the trans movement. Because when they, this movement started, really 40, 50 years ago after the Stonewall riots, right? And they're trying to normalize gay rights, and then ultimately gay marriage, and which was a huge success for that movement. But that movement was still there once gay marriage was legalized, right? And so it needed somewhere else to go. It needed somewhere else to push. And the next level was transgenderism. And so, that I think is a line that even the person that would be a little more tolerant of just, okay, I've got a gay neighbor, they're nice folks. If they want to get married, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother my kids and whatever. But now that movement is pushed too far. Now it's transgenderism. It affects so many things at a different level, and especially when they want to teach it to my kids. No. So that now they've pushed too far, and folks are now starting to rethink their acceptance of anything that movement has pushed. So the L and the B and the G that had their rights celebrated over the past 10 years. Well, now that's going to get looked at with more scrutiny, than it did before because of the T. Because of the transgenderism stuff. So it's a fascinating movement, a fascinating moment, because I think the movement's realized that they messed up here. They didn't know where to stop, and they should have stopped sooner. So anyway, it's an interesting moment. So you made a great point about how to share this and how to frame this. And I don't know if you saw this clip. I'm going to play it here. Dr. Phil, a few days ago, had a fifth grade teacher on the program and discussing this issue, and it's just the way he dealt with how to respond to folks that are insisting that a man can become a woman and a woman can become a man, and this whole you can choose your gender thing. The way he's responding to this is just spot on. So I'm going to play it. Will, here we go.
Watch how it goes.
Transgender boys who might not have their own money to go buy tampons, if they're provided free in the bathroom, it's a huge plus.
Men do not menstruate. Only women menstruate. Now, you can call yourself whatever you want.
Cis men don't menstruate, but trans men do menstruate.
No,
Same
they
as
don't.
Non-binary people.
Only women.
Menstruating is not exclusive
Yes,
to
it
cis
is.
women. No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
So explain to me as to why my body
if you are,
menstruated at
if
some
your
point
chromosomes are XX and you're young, you menstruate.
No.
If you're XY, you don't.
Correct, but what about trans men and non-binary?
They're
We're
not
excluding
men.
a whole group of people
They're women
that
dressed
menstruate.
as men. You are not a man. You can pretend to be a man, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. Live your life. Tell me what a man is.
Well, what's a man to you? You define a man for me.
You have chromosomes that are X and Y. That's what a man is.
So why are we just looking at the science of this as an example?
Science.
When we've learned sex and gender identity are they're completely different things.
They're not completely different.
They are completely different.
Completely different words.
And sex is what you're born with, the sexual reproductive organs you have. Gender is what you identify with. They're completely
Well, I don't
different
accept that
things.
distinction. You have to argue for it. You're just giving a conclusion. You're just making it up. The people who hate the truth, are because they see the truth as hateful. If you want to identify in any way you can, you're free to do so. But that does not mean that the rest of us have to join that illusion. You disagree, I disagree with you, and so you call it hate. But there's no hate in my heart at all, so that's
You
wrong.
are being hateful when you tell somebody that identifies as a man that they're not a man.
That's not hateful. That's a fact.
I have to say,
So good. I mean, it's just so good. He responded in a way that was very calm, but truthful, and basically said, "Listen, I don't have to agree with you to still care about you and not hate you." I mean, it was so well said, people need to take that as a lesson of how to respond to this stuff, because they want to insist that you agree with them. They're making assertions that they think are true, or they want to be true, and they insist that you agree with that, whether or not it's true or not, and whether or not you agree. So it's like a Orwellian sort of mode where, what do you mean that 2 + 2 is 5? You don't agree with that? Well, then you're a hater. It's like, well, hold on. It's never been 5. It's always been 4. Well, but you're a hater for just even questioning that. And it's such a great moment on so. Thanks, Dr. Phil, bringing the 5th grade teacher on. Explain it better than anyone. But any comments, guys, on that? Or
Yeah, I tell you, I liked the word illusion that he used. It truly is an emperor. The emperor has no closed moment, going on right there, because as he said, the other side likes to talk about follow the science all the time. The fact of the matter is, if you're female, you have XX chromosomes. If you're a male, you have an XY chromosome. That's the fact. There is no diversion from that. Now, if you're a Christian,
but gender's different. But gender's different, Bob. Gender and sex is two different things.
If you want to play up, when I was a kid, that everybody liked to play house and dress up and do all those things. You can do that, but it's a fantasy world. It's an illusion, and I think that is a wonderful way to look at this and consider that. And gender dysmorphia is it's an issue, and we're all working very hard to be politically correct, and that's why it is important that we approach these things in love, but also speak the truth, as we're dealing with this.
Exactly right. Well, we've run out of time. We could probably go on another half an hour. I wanted to talk about just political issues as it relates to this topic in the state, but we really don't have the time for it. So maybe we'll extend this and do an extra segment here, just for online. But because the governor has had a lot to say about this issue during his tenure, and I think that might play into the election. So. But anyway, well, Richard and Bob, thanks for being on the show tonight. And you're watching the station, Kentucky's Conservative Outpost.